My name is Lyra Halden, and I was banned from Thanksgiving 2 weeks after sending my family $4,800 to cover their winter heating bill. It wasn't a fight. There were no shouting matches, no slammed doors, just a quiet phone call and a single sentence from my father. "Cassidy's been tense lately. It's best if you stay put this year." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a polite exile wrapped in concern for my younger sister's peace of mind. I stared at the phone like it had mispronounced my name. This was after nearly 2 years of me covering the heating bills for their old, drafty house. After watching Cassidy blow thousands of dollars on failed hobbies while I picked up extra shifts to keep their furnace running. And now I was told to stay away, not because of anything I did, but because Cassidy might get anxious if I showed up. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat down in silence, and stared at the wall. And then I made a decision. I wouldn't fight for a place at a table where I was only welcome when the thermostat read 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That was the moment I stopped being their safety net, and the moment they started feeling the real cost of cutting me out. The morning after that call, I stood by the window of my apartment, holding the same chipped mug I'd had since college. Outside, Milwaukee wore its November gray like a second skin. The wind scratched against the window frame, and I could hear the early shuffle of neighbors leaving for work, boots scraping over icy sidewalks. I wasn't sure what stung more, my father's voice, so casual and unbothered, or the way I realized, for the first time, that they had rehearsed this decision without me. They didn't call to discuss. They called to inform. Cassidy was always the sensitive one, the delicate storm everyone tiptoed around. I was the stable one, the one who kept her voice low when things got tense, the one who sent money without being asked. Last January, Dad called at midnight, voice cracking because the furnace had failed, and Mom was crying from the cold. I paid the full bill the next morning. In March, I covered the repair costs when the heat sputtered again. In September, I sent $400 ahead of the cold snap. No one thanked me, but I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I thought family meant filling in the cracks when others couldn't. But apparently, it also meant I had no say when Cassidy got anxious. That morning, I sat at my desk and opened the utility account I'd been paying on their behalf for 2 winters. I hovered over the cancel button, paused, then clicked. A pop-up appeared. Service scheduled to end November 2nd. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just done. It's strange how quiet your mind becomes when you finally let go of something that was never yours to hold. For years, I had carried their burdens as if they were mine. Every winter, when their pipes groaned and their oil tank ran low, I picked up extra shifts at the shipping dock, logged into my account, and sent whatever I could. Not because they asked, but because no one else would. Cassidy was always busy building her brand. One year, it was handmade candles. The next, it was a podcast that barely lasted 6 episodes. She'd borrow money from Mom and Dad, burn through it, and post pictures on Instagram, latte art, rooftop brunches, designer coats tagged #hustlelife. While she photographed her matcha, I was hauling pallets through sleet, my fingers stiff from cold and fatigue. I never told anyone how I skipped buying a new winter coat just to keep their thermostat running. Never mentioned how many times I canceled dinner with coworkers because the heating bill needed paying. They didn't ask, and I didn't offer. The last payment I made was 10 months ago, $400. I logged it, like all the others, in a spreadsheet tucked away in a folder titled Family Winter Support. Every transfer was marked with the same quiet hope, so they won't have to worry. But that call, "Stay home this year," snapped something in me. Not with rage, not even sadness, just a cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. They didn't exclude me because I failed them. They excluded me because I made their lives too easy. I was the quiet fix behind every problem, and now that things felt calm, because I had worked to make them calm, I was no longer needed. So I stepped back and let the cold in. November arrived like a slap. Early snow, bitter wind, the kind that rattles old windows and seeps through the walls like memory. I didn't expect them to notice the missing payments right away. That was the quiet part of being the one who handles everything. You go unseen until something breaks. But I knew. I knew the oil delivery would stop. I knew the thermostat would drop one slow degree at a time, and I knew exactly how long it would take before someone reached out. The first message came 4 days after the cancellation date. It was from my mother, soft and oblivious. "Hey, sweetie, the heat's acting strange. Could you check the account? It might be a system glitch." A system glitch. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she mention Thanksgiving. I didn't reply. The next day, Cassidy chimed in with her usual tact. So childish. No greeting, no context, just accusation. She probably thought I was throwing a tantrum. She didn't know I had planned the silence like a chess move. Not to win, but to finally stop losing. Then came Dad. He called once. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, sharp and clipped. "Lyra, I don't know what's going on. The house is at 58 degrees. If you did something, fix it. Call me." Not what happened. Not are you okay? Just fix it. That was the problem, wasn't it? To them, I was always the fixer. The one who showed up without being asked. The one who didn't need to be seen or thanked, just used. I didn't listen to the full voicemail. Instead, I grabbed my coat and walked 3 blocks through the snow to the bookstore on Oak. I browsed the dusty aisles like I had all the time in the world. Then I settled in at the cafe next door with a paperback in one hand and a warm cinnamon waffle in the other. I watched people come and go, laughing, rushing, living, and I sat there, still, letting myself exist outside the emergency my family had built around me. That's when I realized the silence wasn't punishment. It was permission. Permission to stop fixing, stop waiting, stop apologizing for drawing a line that should have been drawn years ago. I used to think love meant showing up, even when you weren't wanted. But now I understood. Love without respect isn't love. It's labor, unpaid, unspoken, unreturned. So I let the messages pile up, unread, unanswered, because they didn't come from concern. They came from inconvenience. And for the first time, I refused to be the solution. The snow kept falling, thick and deliberate. By November 10th, Milwaukee looked like a postcard. White rooftops, frozen sidewalks, breath visible even indoors. That morning, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I picked it up, out of habit. "Hi, is this Miss Halden? I'm calling from Northern Fuel Systems. You were listed as the primary contact for the heating account at 114 Langdon Street." My grip tightened slightly on the mug in my hand. "Yes," I said. "I just wanted to confirm. You're not planning to renew service? We haven't heard from the current occupants, and since the account was under your name, the cancellation went through earlier this month." "That's correct," I said clearly. "The contract was canceled, and it won't be renewed. I'm no longer responsible for that house." A pause on the other end. Then a quiet, "Understood. Thank you." I hung up and stared at the snow drifting past the window. They hadn't even realized the account wasn't in their name. For 2 winters, I had managed the billing, the deliveries, the maintenance calls. I had been their invisible infrastructure. Now, without me, they were learning how cold November could be. On the 14th, the messages returned, more frequent now. "Mom, it's 50 degrees in the house. Your dad refuses to wear a coat. Cassidy's coughing. Please call." "Dad, this isn't about money anymore. This is family." "Cassidy, pretend you were never part of this family. That's fine. We'll remember it." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because for the first time, I was letting them feel everything. The silence, the struggle, the consequences of building a home on the back of someone you refuse to seat at the table. And still, there was no apology. Only expectation. On November 21st, just 3 days before Thanksgiving, the cold outside had turned sharp, metallic. I was in the middle of making grilled cheese for dinner. 2 slices of sourdough, buttered edges, the kind of meal that felt comforting when the rest of the world didn't. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't look, but the preview of the message made me pause mid-slice. "If you still consider yourself part of this family, now's the time to prove it." Dad. I stared at the screen, then locked it and slid it face down on the table. There it was again, the test, the dare, the quiet gaslighting wrapped in obligation. To them, family was not a bond. It was a role I had to perform, and somehow I had failed my line. I finished cooking, plated the sandwich, and sat down on my sofa. I took slow bites, chewing through the silence. Outside, the wind howled against the apartment building. It sounded like a warning, or maybe a reminder. At 7:42 p.m., the doorbell rang. Not a casual knock, not a friendly one. It was steady, insistent. I stood up, walked slowly to the door, and checked the peephole. My father. Gray coat zipped all the way up, snow stuck to his boots and collar, his face drawn tight with cold and frustration. I opened the door just a few inches. The warm air from inside immediately hit his face. His eyes blinked rapidly from the contrast. "Lyra," he said, his voice low. "We need to talk." I didn't move. "I don't think today's the right day." "You cut the heat," he said flatly. "I didn't cut anything," I replied. "I stopped paying. There's a difference." He squinted. "The company didn't even notify us." "Because the account was under my name," I said calmly. "For 2 years, over $8,000. I let the words hang. "And then, with one phone call, you decided I shouldn't come home, to keep Cassidy calm." "She's been struggling," he said. "You know that." I shook my head. "She's been bailed out, by all of you, over and over. I struggled too. I just didn't make it everyone else's responsibility." He looked at the floor. "We've sold what we can. Your mom's sick. It's 38 degrees inside." I didn't budge. "You told me to stay away to keep the peace," I said. "I stayed away. I found peace. Now maybe it's your turn to figure out what that costs." He exhaled slowly, as if realizing, for the first time, that I had always been holding more than just a utility bill. "You're punishing us," he said again, softer now. "No," I said. "I'm just finally letting you feel what it's like when I stop carrying everything." He didn't speak again. Eventually, he turned and walked back into the snow. His footsteps were heavy, deliberate, like he couldn't decide whether he was angry or ashamed. I closed the door behind him. The latch clicked. It wasn't loud, but it felt final. The snow hadn't let up in days. By the time the Thanksgiving weekend ended, Milwaukee was buried in white. The streets were quiet, hushed under a thick blanket of cold. It had been almost a week since my father stood at my door, since he left without answers, since I stopped wondering whether they would ever see me as more than a solution. I was folding a wool sweater on the couch, letting the steady hum of the space heater fill the room when the doorbell rang again. This one wasn't forceful. It was soft, hesitant, almost unsure, like whoever stood behind it wasn't convinced they'd be welcomed. I peeked through the peephole. It was my mother, wrapped in a bulky coat that looked borrowed, scarf cinched too tight around her neck, her hair flattened by snow. Her shoulders hunched like the weight she carried had finally caught up to her. She wasn't holding herself like someone who came to win an argument. She looked like someone who came to surrender. I opened the door slightly. The cold slid between us. "Lyra!" she said, her voice cracking, either from the wind or something deeper. "I know I should have called, but I didn't know if you'd pick up." I didn't speak. "I took the bus," she said. "Walked from the station. It took over an hour." I leaned against the doorframe, my hand still on the knob, still bracing myself for guilt, for excuses. But she didn't offer any, not right away. "I've been thinking a lot since that call," she said, glancing at her boots, "about everything, and I need to say it. I was wrong." Her voice shook. "Not just about Thanksgiving. About the way I let things happen. The way I watched you carry things that weren't yours. I never should have allowed that." I crossed my arms, not from defiance, but to hold something inside me still. "I saw you pay for things, cover gaps, step in over and over," she continued, "and I told myself it was okay, because you were strong, because you didn't complain. But I think I mistook your silence for consent. And that's on me." I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. because somewhere, buried beneath years of being overlooked, a small part of me still wanted her to see it, to see me. Cassidy regrets it too, she added quietly. She said this never should have happened. She's not doing well. I let out a short breath, not quite a laugh. Cassidy only regrets things when they backfire. I know, my mother said, looking up at me now, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't say sorry for the part I played. There was no manipulation in her eyes, no begging, just a tired woman standing in the snow, trying to face what she helped break. I don't want you to come back, she said. Not unless you want to, not unless it's right. I just want you to know you matter, even if it took us too long to say it. I opened the door a little wider, not to invite her in, but to let her feel the warmth she had ignored for so long, the home I built by myself, the peace I fought to earn. I'm not angry anymore, I said, but I'm not the same daughter either. I won't be the one holding the family together with duct tape and grace. I've let that job go. She nodded slowly. There was nothing left to say. We stood there for a few moments more, her outside in the cold, me inside in the heat, a quiet boundary between who we were and who we had become. Then she turned and walked away, one cautious step at a time. I didn't close the door right away. But when I didn't lock it out of fear. I locked it out of peace. December settled in without fanfare. It didn't need to announce itself, just showed up, steady and silent, the way a season does when you stop keeping track of the days. The snow was constant now, coating rooftops, softening noise, making the world quieter. Inside my apartment, everything was still. Not empty, just still. I'd fallen into a rhythm that felt more like living than surviving. Early mornings started with coffee and a knit shawl wrapped around my shoulders. My space heater buzzed softly while I got ready for work, no longer rushing to cover someone else's emergency. In the evenings, I wandered the local market, picking out fresh produce and pastries I never used to let myself buy. I'd come home, heat up soup, read for hours, and sometimes just sit in the silence. Not the silence of being forgotten, the silence of no longer begging to be remembered. My phone stayed mostly quiet. No new messages, no surprise voicemails, and I didn't miss them. Dana, my cousin, kept in touch. Sometimes she called while I was folding laundry or sautéing onions. She updated me on the things I no longer asked about. Cassidy had moved in with a friend temporarily after her latest breakup and another failed project. Dad had sold Grandpa's watch collection to pay for heating oil. Mom had been staying in a motel off the highway. Dana's voice always hesitated when she reached that part, but I didn't ask for details. They were doing what they had to do now, like I had done for years. Only I was called selfish for stepping back, while they were seen as struggling. One night, Dana said, "You know, I think you're the only one in that family who actually changed." Maybe I had, because that winter, for the first time in years, I didn't feel cold. Not on the outside, and not in the pit of my chest where guilt used to live. I didn't check Cassidy's social media anymore. I didn't wonder if Dad was angry or if Mom missed me. They had their silence. I had mine. But mine came with peace, with warm socks and ginger tea and a heater that I paid for with my own 2 hands. And I had no desire to give any of it up.